There's a name for what's been keeping you here. And it's not the one you've been using. It isn't fear of failure. It isn't lack of commitment. It isn't even the mortgage or the dependence or the market, though those are real, and this video won't pretend otherwise. It's something more specific than any of those things, something that operates quietly, beneath the level where most career advice ever goes. Because you've been living inside it for years. Here's what this video is going to do. First, it's going to name the specific mechanism. Then it's going to explain why it works the way it does, and why, specifically, it hits hardest in people who are intelligent, capable, and deeply self-aware. And then it's going to show you what actually interrupts it. Not a leap, not a resignation letter, something smaller, and far more navigable than anything you've probably tried. Let's start with where you actually are. You understood it. You understood that the job had stopped fitting. You had the vocabulary for it. You might have even done the reading, the career books, the assessment tools, maybe a coach, and then nothing changed. Not just, I haven't changed careers yet. Here's the thing about that story, though. Wrong in a more specific, more useful way. The problem is not that you don't understand your situation, because understanding the problem and being able to move are not the same thing. So what is that reason? Let me give you the precise answer. Here is what's actually happening. And potential, unlike performance, cannot be disproved. If it works, the question resolves. That's the good outcome. Evidence. Permanent, difficult to reframe evidence about what you are actually capable of. Behavioral economists have a name for the broader version of this pattern, status quo bias. But what's happening here is more specific than that. It's what researchers studying identity-protective cognition have documented in people who have built strong self-concepts around their own potential. The mortgage is real, the dependents are real, the market uncertainty is real, but they are also, in a specific and important sense, doing double duty. They are real obstacles, and they are also a credible explanation, one that preserves the possibility without requiring the test. Psychologists call this protective ambiguity. The maintenance of an unresolved situation, specifically because resolution carries identity risk. The mechanism has a name now. And named things are navigable in ways that unnamed things are not. Now here's where this gets really interesting and harder. Here is the part that almost no one says out loud. The more capable you are, the more you've built, the more you've proven, the more your professional identity is tied to your sense of your own potential, the more powerful this mechanism becomes. Because the thing being protected is larger. The potential you're protecting is specific. It's built from 2 decades of evidence that you are someone who, if they committed to something, could make it work. Trying and having it not work doesn't just mean the career change didn't pan out. It means something about the whole architecture. Research on high achievers and career transition shows a consistent pattern. The people most paralyzed by the decision are not the ones who doubt their capabilities the most. They are the ones who have the most to lose if the doubt turns out to be correct. The paralysis is not evidence of limitation. It is evidence of investment. The smarter you've been about what you've built, the harder it is to risk definitive evidence about what you might not be able to build next. That is not a character flaw. That is the mechanism. And here's what makes it worth sitting with for a moment. Really sitting with. The self-concept you've been protecting by staying, the version of you who could do something different if you really committed, is being quietly eroded by the staying itself. Every year in the wrong role, a small piece of that belief disappears. Not because you've tested it and it failed, because you've never tested it at all. The protection strategy has a cost, and the cost is the thing being protected. That is the specific cruelty of protective ambiguity. It works until it doesn't, and by the time it doesn't, the thing it was designed to preserve has already been spent. If what's been described here feels true, if what you needed wasn't a framework you didn't have, but a name for something that's been operating without one, the work that comes next is the inner work. There's a structured journaling resource in the description built specifically for this. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. So if understanding alone isn't enough, and by now you know it isn't, what actually does interrupt this mechanism? So, what actually interrupts this? Not a leap, not a resignation letter, not a commitment to a new direction before you've had any evidence it can hold your weight. Understanding the mechanism is necessary, but you already know that understanding alone doesn't move it. You've had versions of the behavioral economics vocabulary for a while, and you're still here. What interrupts protective ambiguity is not a bigger commitment to the uncertain future. It's the introduction of small, verifiable, low-stakes evidence. that begins to shift what the self-concept is built on. Here is the distinction that matters. Protective ambiguity survives as long as the only available test is a binary one. Stay or go, keep the job or leave it, bet everything or bet nothing. The reason that binary feels so dangerous is that both options put the entire self-concept at risk. Staying means the erosion continues. Leaving means the test produces evidence you can't take back. The exit from this is not choosing one horn of that dilemma. It's the discovery that the dilemma is false. There is a version of this where you begin generating evidence without requiring the full risk. A project taken on outside of hours that uses a skill you've never been paid for in the current role. A conversation, not a job application. A conversation with someone doing the work you think you want to do. A written document, private, of what you actually built over 20 years, translated out of the language of your current job title and into what it actually is. These are not career change moves. They are self-concept moves. They are the process of introducing small amounts of evidence on the other side of the ledger, the side that has only ever had potential on it. Because here's what protective ambiguity cannot survive. Not a dramatic leap. Not a bet everything moment. Concrete, specific, low-stakes evidence that the version of you who could do something different is not just a possibility. It is already, in small ways, a fact. That is the interruption. Not courage, evidence. And evidence, unlike potential, is cumulative. Every small proof point makes the binary feel less like the only option. Every concrete thing you build, quietly, privately, before anyone needs to know, shifts what the self-concept is resting on. The paralysis is not the problem. The paralysis is information. It is telling you exactly where the identity investment is. And that is precisely where the work begins. If this opens something you want to go deeper on, the resource in the description was built for exactly this. The inner work that comes after the mechanism has a name. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. What was the moment you realized this wasn't really about the job anymore, that something else was at stake? You came here with something you've probably been describing to yourself as a lack of courage, or a lack of clarity, or just not being the kind of person who acts on what they know. What you're leaving with is different. The mechanism has a name now. Protective ambiguity. The entirely rational, entirely human strategy of maintaining an unresolved situation. Because resolution carries a risk to something more precious than any job. The belief in your own unrealized potential. You weren't protecting yourself from the future. You were protecting a version of yourself that the future is the only place to find. The years you spent in the wrong role were not wasted. They are the reason you have the judgment to know it's wrong. They are the reason you have the professional literacy to think about leaving carefully. They are the reason the version of you that the next chapter requires already exists. Not as possibility, but as material. You are not someone who failed to become what they were capable of. You are someone who has been intelligently, if unconsciously, protecting something real. And now that you can see the mechanism, you can stop operating it unconsciously and start choosing deliberately. That is not a small thing. Most people who have done this, who have found a genuine, financially grounded, controlled path out, did not start with a leap. They started with a name, with the moment the thing that had been running quietly in the background finally became visible. This was that moment, not someone else's version of this, yours.